today to give us a message to encourage us and to exhort us as we leave here, freshly graduated from Men's Fraternity 2. So would you welcome Sid Woodruff?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Thank you, Will. Well, this is an awesome group. I never get tired of being a part of these manhood ceremonies, and I've had the opportunity to be a part of them in a lot of different parts of the country. And what you don't understand this morning is that you're a part of a vast army that is marching forward into a battle. And the battle that we're marching forward to is a battle that is not going to be won with a part-time army and half-hearted effort. And so what happens here is that you're holding down your sector of this part of the world, but you're not alone. You're part of a bigger army that is marching and moving forward. You know, whenever I stand up to speak before a group, oftentimes it's in various parts of the country, and so I always have to explain to people that I was born and raised in Texas, and I moved to Tennessee. Now, I got to tell you, that's a pretty easy move because you don't have to learn how to talk any faster. But, you know, whenever they hear that you're from Texas, you know, Texans are noted for being braggarts, and it reminds me of the Texan who was in Ireland, and he was touring the countryside kind of on his own. He'd ventured out there, and as he's looking out over into this field, he sees this Irishman hoeing his potatoes, and he asked, thought he'd have a little fun with the guy, so he said, "Hey, what are you doing over there?" He said, "Well, I'm hoeing my potatoes." The Texan said, "Can I see one of them?" And the Irishman holds it up, and he holds up this really fine prized potato, and the Texan says, "Why, do you call that a potato? Why, in Texas we grow our potatoes this big." And the Irishman said, "Yes, but in Ireland we grow them to fit our mouths." So, when you're a Texan, you have to be really careful because it can kind of all backfire on you, somehow. I wanted to say to you this morning that one of the things that I did in Men's Fraternity 2 is that I've continued tweaking that plan. This year you went through 10 key moves, and 10 key moves are great. They're the right things that you're supposed to do that will make a tremendous difference, not only in your life now, but in generations to come if you follow through on those 10 key moves. But they need to be updated. You remember when it talked about dating your wife weekly, those weekly connectors that you have with your wife, and then it said, have those quarterly memory makers that you have with your wife where you get away and you spend some time talking about your goals, talking about your 10 key moves and how you're progressing on those so you have that built-in accountability. And then we talked about those yearly extravaganzas that are those things that in years to come you'll look back on and you'll say, here was a mile marker, here was something significant that happened into my life. I kind of want to share one of those events that I have yearly. There's a group of people that I get together with, a group of couples. There are 5 different couples that we go with, and a couple of years ago we decided what we were going to do as a group of guys is to make sure that we made Valentine's a special deal. What we were going to do is every year we were going to get together as a group of guys and we were going to plan a group outing. Well, the first year we stepped up and we took it and we talked with our wives and we said, Valentine's is a two-way thing, right? I mean, why is it, guys, that we're responsible for getting the candy and the cards, right? So, your wife loves you, she cares about you, but we just said what we're going to do to make this unique is the first year what we're going to do is we're going to plan the event. Then the next year the ladies plan the event and it's a surprise. They keep it a secret from one another. So the first year what we did, we took them out to this really nice Chinese restaurant that we knew most all of them had eaten at before, but it's not the kind of place that you would go every day or every week even. It's kind of top shelf, a little bit above. So we took them to this Chinese restaurant. They didn't know it was coming, but it was a great time. We'd made some advanced preparations and arrangements to be there. And it's always really crowded, but it was really a great dinner. And then after that, what we did is we took them ice skating. Now, do I look like an ice skater? I'm not much of an ice skater, but I have skated. I've probably roller skated more than I ice skated. And so, when I skate around the rink, I kind of stay close to the rail. You know what I mean? So we took them ice skating. It was a really nice date. Everybody had a great time together. I'd gone out and bought some flowers and some candy and a card, and each guy had done something special on his own that he surprised his wife with when they came home from the day. But it was something, a way to hold ourselves accountable. And then this last year, what the women did was they took us to Five Guys hamburgers, okay? All right, a burger and fries. Don't give me, this girly stuff. Give me some meat and potatoes. And so we went out there, we had this real man meal. And then after that, they took us another thing involving ice skating, except we went to a hockey game, okay? Something really rough. By the way, I'm sitting there, and the referees, it's between the Predators and the Coyotes. And, of course, right now they're in 3rd and 4th place in the Western Division. So they're already in the playoffs if they can kind of hold on, as they continue through it. But the refs kept breaking up the fights. I mean, they wouldn't let them kind of drop the gloves and go at it. They were really watching the game very closely, and everybody around me was booing at the refs because they wouldn't let the guys fight, okay? Interesting thing about hockey, I found this out, that in 1874, the first testicular guard, the cup, was introduced in hockey and was worn as a piece of equipment in hockey. 1874. In 1974, the helmet became an official part of the hockey uniform, which it means it only took 100 years for men who play hockey to figure out their brains are also important. So what I want to do this morning is I kind of want us to engage our brains and think about where we have been, but just cast a short vision for where we're going this year with our lives and as we leave this place this morning. One of the things that becoming an authentic man involves is it involves a battle. I mean, have you sensed this? I mean, it's a real struggle. It's something that we all have in common with one another. And when we begin talking about stepping up to a higher, more noble, authentic manhood, we realize that we're going to have to fight if we're going to go there. And you guys broke the finish line today. Listen, you should congratulate yourself. You have done something significant because you have said, I'm not willing just to kind of let life come at me. I'm going to have a plan. I'm going to move forward. And that's going to cause you to have some great rewards because you had to die a little bit to yourself in some of those areas of your life. Because you know what? We found out that guys, if we guess at it, generally, what do? We guess wrong, right? So we have to work at it in order to train ourselves to move in a new direction. There's a passage of Scripture where the Bible tells us, and Paul is speaking, and he says, if you're going to fight this fight, take on the full armor of God. And as a part of that armor, what he says is, and take up what? The sword. Take up the sword. The sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. He's writing to Timothy in one place, and when he's writing to Timothy, he says to him in 1 Timothy 1:18, he says this, Timothy, I'm saying these things to you. I'm giving you these instructions, and the reason why I'm giving you these instructions is so that you may strongly engage in battle. He says, take up this sword that's a part of the uniform. Now, I want you to know that every man who aspires to authentic manhood must learn to be able to use his sword. And I want to teach you this morning real quickly 3 moves with the sword. I want to talk to you real quickly about the inward thrust of the sword. I want to talk to you about the forward thrust of the sword. And then I want to talk to you about the upward thrust of the sword this morning. 3 key things every man who aspires to authentic manhood must remember if he is going to be that guy that makes a difference in the lives of his family and breathes life into all the people who are around him. First of all, there is the inward thrust of the sword. That verse that was quoted this morning, repeated over and over again by every man who is here, says, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow Jesus. The inward thrust of the sword, of course, stands for the fact that there's something within us that we must slay, something that must die, something that must be killed if we're really going to become all that we were made to become. This inward thrust of the sword, first of all, of course, has to attack this passivity that every man battles. It's a passivity that we face, and this passivity is a malignancy that has corrupted and impacted every man's life. And who do we owe this to? We go all the way back to Adam, and you remember in the quest for authentic manhood, we looked at authentic manhood and we saw that there were the failures of the first Adam that had been passed on through the generations. And that real authentic manhood is determined by whose shadow are you going to live your life in? Are you going to live your life in the shadow of the first Adam, or are you going to live your life in the shadow of the second Adam, Jesus Christ? And we found out, that the first Adam was a passive male. He was a classic passive male. Because what happened is that Adam in the Garden of Eden, instead of stopping Eve from eating that fruit, which he already knew she was not supposed to eat from, he just kind of stood back and let her take the hit on her own. There's this passivity that we fight within ourselves. When my daughter was 14 years old, I made a decision to spend 30 days with her in a row where we went through a notebook. It was a notebook called the 30 Days. And in those 30 days, in this notebook, there were 30 sealed envelopes. And you might want to try this, by the way. It's by Ross and Reyes. It's called the 30 Days, and it's 30 sealed envelopes. But you open up this blue notebook, and you don't open up the envelope until you're with your daughter. But what I did was I said, listen, I want to make a date with you. I want to meet with you for 30 days in a row. And we had a little room in our house where we could get away from, and I'd gone up there, and I had set up some candles there. And just my daughter and I were going to visit. And I don't know, guys, you may be affectionate. You may feel like you're really close and connected to your daughters. But for me, it was kind of terrifying when I got alone with my daughter, because I began to realize that even though I had shown her affection, even though I'd oftentimes told her that I loved her, every day I had told her that I loved her, I realized that when we sat down face to face that I really hadn't talked to her about some of the deeper things of life, and that I wanted to spend some time where she knew me as her dad, but that we connected as friends. She's 14 years old. We go up into this room, and day by day, you open the envelope, and there's something for the dad to say, and you talk about a little bit about when you were 14 years of age, and then it says, tell us what some of your fears are that you're 14 years of age right now. What are some of these going on? And there's nothing magical about the fact that it's 14. You can do it when they're 15 or 16, but it works best, I found, if you do this with your daughter when she's in those early teen years before she begins dating. So we're going through this, and as we're going through it day by day, there are different things we're doing, and we come to like day 21, 22, something like that, and I open it up and I cut the envelope, and at the part of that session, it's talking about her future mate and what she wants to find in a mate, and you ask her those questions, and she tells you things that she's thinking about, and then it says, Dad, get up out of your seat and go over and place a chair in the middle of the room and place your hands on that chair and imagine that your daughter's future husband is seated in that chair. Now say a prayer out loud for your daughter's future husband. Man, I was laying it on thick. Okay, I wanted him to be sexually pure. I wanted him to be a believer. I wanted him to come from a home, where Christ was known and recognized and loved and appreciated. And I wanted them to be able to share the same church and spiritual life together. And so I'm praying these things out loud. Later on, when my daughter began dating, I remember one particular guy that she had been dating, and she was very discerning. But, like all girls, they want to know, am I pretty? Does anybody love me? Listen, if you as a man don't give that to your daughter, she will go off searching for it from other people, but she must hear it from her father. And so I would tell her how beautiful she was and how wonderfully she was created. And she even told my wife one time when she asked about someone who had asked her out, and my daughter said this, she said, no, I don't think he's the kind of man Dad would want me to marry.